Alex Phillips.
Yeah, lovely lady, yeah.
Sat there, what was it, Politics Live or Newsnight or something like that? What was it last night?
Newsnight.
I've seen men behave like that in bars, grab hold of women's arms, say, shut up, we're going home. I've seen it, and you're like, ugh, or you were trying to intervene. Alistair Campbell seems to be doing this on television.
You know, funny enough, I've been on with Alistair Campbell a few times, and he's always been very congenial and calm with me, but his behaviour last night was completely out of order. Alex was very, very upset, and apparently stuff went on after they got off, you know,
He's still going
screen.
at it. I've been watching it on social media. He's still going at it, going, you are this, you are that. Is he, I mean, this is a man that sent 1 million people to die, or killed 1 million people.
Yeah, well, he's part of that whole cabal that waged war, I think, illegally. And, you know, hundreds of thousands of people, absolutely, and never brought to justice. So, you know, it was a very unfortunate turn that the debate took last night, obviously for Alex Phillips, but also it completely undermined the debate they were having, which would have been quite a good debate. Alex is incredibly knowledgeable, as you'll appreciate, on the subject, and he just absolutely browbeat her to the point that it just became a shouting match.
And he was wrong, wasn't he, when he was saying all these laws were made in, were legislated in English Parliament. What was he?
Yeah, so, you know, he was fundamentally wrong. And I don't know how much the, you know, viewers want to know about this, the detail of it, but the debate right now is over 4,000 EU regulations. And I say regulations, not laws. These are 4,000 EU regulations on our statute books, which Rishi Sunak promised he would ditch within the first 100 days of being Prime Minister.
And he's not going to do it.
And he's not going to do it.
He's given it to Kemi to do, so Kemi's hated and doesn't get to
And Kemi said, well, the civil service are, you know, too much to deal with, so I'm going to not do these things. But you need to know what EU regulations are. EU regulations are not something that Parliament had a say in. EU regulations were made in Brussels, finalised in Brussels, and then foisted verbatim on every single member state in the EU. So these laws that we have suit entirely the EU. They don't suit the British national interest one iota. They were created by the EU for the EU.
Okay,
so when Alistair Campbell said to Alex, and he shouted her down, that these were debated in Parliament and Parliament accepted them, he is 100% wrong.
Well, yeah, I mean, we never expect him to be anything other than what he is. But, OK, so talking about our sovereignty and all of this stuff, the Tories have dropped this idea of going, we're going to take it down to tens of thousands, migration into this country. Yeah. We're now looking at 1 million people. What happened to Brexit and reclaiming our borders? It
is a complete shocker. So David Cameron, if you can cast your mind as far back as that.
I try not to think about him unless I go past him in a run in Hyde Park, and I'm like...
But he said he'd have numbers down to the low 10, you know, 10,000 a year. And Brexit was the opportunity and indeed the promise to take back control of our borders. We were going to get a points-based skills immigration policy put in place, which, to be fair to Boris Johnson, he did do. But he set the skill base so low that we've got unbridled immigration. Last year, we had 500,000. The running average before COVID and lockdowns was about 350,000 a year. Last year, we had 500,000, and people blamed it on a backlog from lockdowns. Well, this year, we're going to have near on 1 million. It is our borders completely out of control. So it's no wonder that both illegal migration and legal migration are just completely through the roof. We've got a government that simply doesn't know how to govern. And it's shocking. And, you know, let's just put this into context. 1.5 million people will take up 300,000 houses. That's about a 1.5 years' worth of new house supply. We've already got a housing shortage. What do you think 1.5 million people does to the NHS, which is already broken? Waiting list of 7.5 million versus 3 million post-lockdown. What do you think it does to schooling and all the rest of it?
I want to take it further than that.
Yeah.
And you cannot have a culture so unremittingly replaced. And
I'm so glad you've taken it there.
To me, that's the bit that terrifies me.
Yeah.
So also what we do is, same with the woke thing, calling everybody a racist. It's like you just let all the racists run free wild. Whereas by letting everybody into a country, you're not letting the genuine refugees and the public's confidence in the immigration system is going to be massively diminished. And I hate to say it, but I'm going to say it. I feel like my culture is being replaced in front of my eyes. And every time I go, I've got a slight problem with, you know, guys trying to scale, which happened in North West Leicestershire. A guy tried to scale the fence of a primary school. An immigrant who was living in the hotel.
Illegal.
This guy doesn't understand my culture, our culture. Doesn't matter what skin colour you are or any of these things. It's absolutely terrifying. Yeah. And why is a Conservative government doing absolutely nothing about it?
So this is it's such an important point, because all the points that I made about housing, infrastructure, all the rest of it, you can at least economically at some point get over that. What you can't get over is the complete destruction of British values, British heritage, and, as you say, our culture. And what we don't do in this country is multiculturalism. We don't do it well. What tends to happen is people come into the country, they retire into their little enclaves, they continue with whatever their culture was from wherever they came, and they don't assimilate. They don't, for example, I imagine, swear allegiance to the king last Saturday. And without assimilation, without an integration, without the best of all cultures coming to the fore, what you're going to get, and what we're beginning to see quite in the open, is a fractured society.
Cultural isolation.
Cultural isolation. And moreover, and I know you're more aware of this than I am, but moreover, you get a situation where the minorities are now threatening the majority, because if you don't accept and champion their values, you're seen as somehow inherently racist.
Well, it's a very dangerous thing, though, because if on the one side culture is so unconfident in itself, Britain is so unconfident in itself, it goes, we have to include, it's all about inclusion. What you end up including is a bunch of nutcases, you know, in terms of people that sit there and go, I want to put on
But
a
it's not about inclusion. But it's not about inclusion.
It's about exclusion.
It's about exclusion.
Yeah.
It's about the promotion of ethnic and other minorities at the exclusion of white people, essentially white people. That's what it is.
But it's not just white people, because you would fit into that circumstance now, because you're an established Brit.
I know, people would accuse me of being racist, even though I'm...
Badnock would. You know, people that are British, it's got nothing to do with skin colour, never has. It's a cultural issue.
Yeah.
We're a wonderfully multiracial country, but we're terrible at multiculturalism beyond the takeaway.
So what we have to do is eject woke as a general policy for government, and I'm afraid woke is a thing in government. And when the Labour Party says the Tories have got to stop fighting the culture wars, actually, the Tory party has to get a grip of the culture war.
Start fighting the culture wars.
Start doing it. Start defending what is inherently British. They've got to do it. And, you know, this hijacking of our society by woke is undermining our self-confidence. It's undermining our position as a country. And it's got to stop. Right,
in the interest of balance, because why not?
Yeah.
Because we've got to be balanced. Thank you, Mr. Ofcom, patronise your public. Yeah. In the interest of balance, are you and I just both white supremacists?
Well, I'm certainly not white. I'm half Pakistan.
No, but have you not seen in America when the Hispanic guy killed all the people at the mall, tragically, in America, they said it was an example of whiteness. So whiteness now is not specific to skin colour. Anyone can... anyone who goes out, pulls out a gun and kills people, whether they're black, white or any other colour, it's an example of white supremacy.
Well, it seems to me that if you hold anything other than white people with a degree of suspicion and, possibly loathing, unless you adopt that view, you are basically a white racist. And people accuse Suella Braverman, who is doing her best to control the illegal migration, doing absolutely right that she calls it an invasion. That's what it is. They accuse Suella of being a racist. Suella's not a racist. She's just trying to do the right thing.
By their own woke orthodoxy, she can't be a racist.
Yeah,
because you can't be racist in the...
But she doesn't say the things that they want to hear.
Well, she's not politically of colour. That's the other problem, isn't it? Because we're fragmenting apart. And it's why woke is so dangerous and why I think this country is heading into a terrible revolution, actually. Because if you can't have someone that's politically black but not racially black, or politically brown and not... It's unbelievable.
And it's very important. The vast majority of people just want their buses to work on time and education for their children to be good and so on. But it's very important the nation understands what's going on here, because it is, as you say, a culture war that will undermine, well, as I was saying too, it'll undermine the country. It's undermining the foundations of our self-belief, and that is a disaster for the United Kingdom. We've got to go forward confident as a nation, confident in our values, confident in our heritage, confident in our history. We should be proud of who we are. There's so much positive that we've contributed to the world, and all of that is being trounced by this kind of wokery, and it's just got to stop.
But should we, at the same time, stop and take pause and say, look, Britain has done some bad things in the world, and maybe that wasn't in our history lessons when we were at school. You know, some of the massacres that...
I disagree.
Yeah.
Actually, I was educated... I had the privilege of a really good education, and General Dyer, who was responsible for the Amritsar massacre, was part of our history. And no, I mean, we were given a very balanced view, but the overall result of the British Empire was positive. If it wasn't positive, you and I wouldn't be sitting here today having a very open conversation about the subject.
Allowed to, without being shut down, closed off and killed, essentially. As you know, that silly doctor who posted the 2 pictures of the coronation and then a North Korean rally, and she went, spot the difference. And I was like, you're a lawyer. I don't know what her name is, but it's like the cognitive dissonance these people...
Well, it's like that actor who I can't remember her name now. The actress from
Andera Anjoad. Yeah, but
Yeah.
she's going to... Did you see the BBC? The BBC. They're like automatons. They're like clones. They remind me of each other. She was like, "Oh, I said this thing that was a bit upsetting," and he went, "No, you didn't upset anyone."
Yeah.
And
But it was overtly racist.
I said Britain's a really nice place to live. Never get to act again. She'll be applauded for hating on the country and the people that love her. And
the royal family, a day on which the royal family was being celebrated. And the other one I just want to mention while we're on it is Yusuf Hamza. If I got it right, I can never...
Hamza Yusuf.
Hamza Yusuf, yeah. So, he stands up. He's now First Minister of Scotland, one of the most senior political positions in the country, and he stood up in Holyrood and bemoaned the fact... And bemoaned the fact that there were white people in office. Yeah. I mean, how does that happen?
Oh, man, it just... how can people not see where this ends? If you divide people down the lines of skin colour, where does it end?
It's awful.
Where does it end?
And so we've got to get back to the way I was brought up, at least, which is it doesn't matter what colour you are, it doesn't matter what religion you are, it doesn't matter what sexual preferences you have. What matters is what kind of person you are, what contribution you're making to the country, and how you carry yourself through your life. That's what matters. And we've got to get back to that kind of meritocratic, blind to colour attitude. I can't believe that we've allowed the country to be so hijacked in this way, that racism is actually alive and kicking, but it's being perpetrated against the indigenous white population of the United Kingdom. It's awful.
Not going to argue with you there, Ben. I think there's a lot of racism directed at a lot of people, but I think white people get it too.